Hey folks, welcome to another Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's tools, tips, and talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. In today's episode, we're going to continue our folder series. We're going to get pretty far into it this week, so definitely stay tuned. Let's go take a look. So let's recap from where we were last time. We got the mechanism working, so the blade opens, stops where it's supposed to stop on the stop pin, and closes where it's supposed to close. We still have to trim up the liners, but again, we're not in a rush to do that. So now we're going to work on the lock bar, okay? And remember, label these, because this is the lock side for someone who's right-handed, because you're going to want to push the lock back on this side to release the blade. So that's what we're going to start first. So let's disassemble. So I've got the lock side off, and I've just, with layout fluid, just connected these two holes. Remember, these are just placement holes. So you can see this line, and then a perpendicular line here. Okay, so that's what we're going to cut. And how we're going to cut this is we're going to use one of these Dremels in the mill or drill press or whatever you have. I like this brand because they have a locking mechanism. You can use these. The problem is sometimes these spin. They get loose and they spin in the chuck, and then it doesn't cut anything, so they're not as good. Best to get the Dremel brand with the pivot lock here. So I've got the lock liner chucked up here. I've leveled it so that the blade is going to cut exactly on that line. And remember, if you're doing this in a drill press, again, your drill press chuck is not meant for side load, which is what you're doing here. So just be careful, go slow, put your drill at the maximum speed it will go for this. So there's the lock bar cut. You can see I had a little issue on this side when the blade started getting used up. It started to curve a little bit, which is fine. I was actually going I had the disc, when I was going this way, I should have had the disc rotate in the other direction, but yeah, it's fine. What's nice is there's a nice crisp corner here, and yeah, that should work. Now let's talk about the hardware you're going to need. So there's some different options here, so I'm going to take you through a bunch of them. So first is the pivot. So that's going to be the bolt that goes through our pivot hole over here. So you can go with something like this, which is pure titanium. It's got titanium nuts on either side that are nice looking. What I'm going to do for this particular construction is I'm going to be hiding this with a bolster. So I don't really want to spend money on these. These are, I think they're about 10 bucks a piece. So I don't really want to be spending money on these if they're just going to be hidden. So what I'm going to use is what these sex bolts, they're called, which just has kind of a button cap end, and then it's got one open end for one of these. And I'm just going to use a very simple nut here. I don't have one out here. Oh, right here. One of these that's a little cheaper because it's just flat. It's got very low profile, but again, it's going to be hidden under the bolster anyway. So we're going to be using that. Next, all of the screws that we're going to be using to put the scales down, the bolsters, all of that stuff, we're going to be using these little guys. These are 256 bolts. These are pure titanium, and they're pretty expensive. I get them from TIconnector.com, and a pack of 25 of these is about 70 bucks. So pretty pricey, but they're very low profile. The heads on these are really tiny, so really good. So next is the washers. So you can go with bearings, but these will definitely require a mill to put this relief for where the bearing goes. I'm not going to be using these. I'm just going to be using washers, which are just fine. Both knives I've done have washers in them, and the action is just fine. I have these nylon washers, which we're going to use during construction. But the final knife, I've purchased these, which are basically Teflon instead of nylon. They're just supposed to be a lot more slidey, whatever the technical term is, and they're bigger, so they have more surface area for you know, just evening out the blade. You can see they're much bigger surface area than these ones. All right, so let's get started. We're going to be using these sex bolts. The first thing I'm going to do is take some 2000 grit emery paper and just clean up the inside of these so it's nice and smooth. The next part to discuss is the bolsters. So that's going to be this area here, the part that covers the front. For this we're going to be using just some 4/16 stainless. This is 1/8 inch. It's already precision ground. So I've just cut out 2 little squares. It doesn't have to be precise right now. We're going to square them up after. Now what we're going to do is take our bolster, and remember this hole and this hole, okay, that's going to be the hole for the scale. That's going to be a hole for the bolster. So really it goes about there. So we'll make it a little bit bigger, and then what we're going to do is CA glue this to the liner. I like to use the lock liner just in case the CA glue, you know, you don't want it in your lock mechanism. So we're going to CA glue this here, and then we're going to drill through the 2 holes. That's this hole and this hole. Those are the holes that are going to hold the bolster on. So I've got a number 49 drill, which is the same thing that these holes are drilled at. Then I'm going to bust off this, just the liner. Hopefully I can keep these 2 together. And then I'm going to drill through with a 44. 44 is a bigger hole. That's a clearance hole so that the screw will just go through. And then the liner is going to be tapped. So now I've got the number 44, which is our clearance hole for our screws. I'm going to drill right through both these holes. So just one thing to note here, I can feel a burr on this hole here, so I'm going to take it over to the disc grinder just so that it's not propped up a little. So now we're going to drill some countersinks for the screws. The screw heads are 140 thousandths wide, so I've got a 5/32 drill here, and they're about 5 thousandths high, but I have to account for the taper on this drill. So I'm going to just drill this to 100 thousandths. So we've got our bolsters drilled and countersunk. If we take our little bolts here, put it in, and that looks really good. So now it's time for threading. So we're going to tap all of the holes. I've already marked them out, the ones I need to tap, with some black marker on both scales, liners. So let's talk about tapping. So we're ready to tap these holes. And it's funny, I was just talking to my buddy Rick Hall, who is going to be taking this folder course, the same one that I took, and he was surprised to learn that we're tapping these by hand and not using the mill or a Tap-O-Matic or something like that. This is the way Mike showed me, Mike Magnino, and it really is the easiest way. We're just going to use a drill. We're going to be, you need to go not too slow here. You need to kind of commit. But really, I put the drill securely on the table here, and then I'm just going to hold this perpendicular and eyeball it. Remember, there's a pilot hole here, so it wants to go straight. We're going to use some of this lube, and then we're going to tap straight through. Remember, these are number 49 holes, and this is a 256 tap. See, as simple as that. If you need anything for knife making, whether it's steel, abrasives, handle material, hardware, tools, you name it, go check out Maritime Knife Supply. They got everything you need with quick shipping to the US and Canada. They'll get it to you quick. So I got all the holes tapped and I've bolted on the bolsters. Now I'm going to go and remove, with the disc grinder, just take off the excess parts of the bolts. We'll also draw a line around here so we can trim up the bolsters. Now I'm also going to go to the drill press and just with a 3/16 drill bit, just go through the pivot hole and just touch a hole. And then I'm going to go down about 100 thousandths with one of these, which is just slightly bigger than my bolts, these guys. And then I'm going to go down with a flat end mill of the same size and just put some relief on the underside of those bolsters. So I noticed a little snag in the design here. So I actually changed this design. I used to have this bolt for the bolster a little closer to the edge, but in my design I like to put bevels on the front, on like the same bevel all the way around, and I couldn't do that because this was a little too close, which is why I moved it. I think I moved it a little too far because when I do this, you'll notice they're really close. For this one, that's fine. I think I have enough clearance. The problem is I don't for this one. So obviously I don't want to redo everything at this point. What I'm going to do is just take the radius of this down on the grinder. I'll just put it in a little sleeve and spin it against the grinder. And it will modify the design. But I think for now we're okay. So I made the modifications to the bolt heads, and now the bolsters fit nice and snug. And because it's got the washers inside, it moves quite nice now. So next I'm going to take off the bolsters and bolt them together so that we can grind the this line here. It's at some weird angle that is not the same, so we're going to do that. But I didn't actually tell folks why I wanted this hidden. Really because for my constructions, most of the time I'm going to be using Damascus for the bolsters, so I don't really want the pivot head there exposed. That does mean if you want to change the, adjust the tension, the pressure on the bolt head, you do have to just take these two off. I'll show you in the other knife that I have. This is what you would do if you wanted it exposed. Note that it becomes the bolt, it becomes the second bolt holding down your bolster. You don't need, here we have two bolts, plus we have the pivot head. If you do it this way, you just use this one as the second bolt holding down this bolster. But we're going to go with a hidden design so that it looks the same on both sides. And another tip, folks, when you take all of these bolts and parts out, put them in something. I just have this glass bowl. I will take them all out and I'll put them in here, because if you start getting them on your work table, you're going to lose them. They're going to drop on the floor. This way they just stay contained. Here's something else you need to be careful of, and that's the barrel. Whether you're using a sex bolt or just using a barrel, the pivot barrel has to be narrower than where your liners are. Because if it doesn't, that means your bolt head is just going to spin. Okay, so if I press here, you'll see that. You can see it's a little, I can feel it, it's a little proud here. So what I'm going to do is take this bolt out, take it to the grinder and grind it down, because you want the bolt head to snug against the liner. It can't stop against the pivot head, the pivot barrel. Now I've got the liners and I've got the bolsters attached to them because we're going to be attaching the scales. So I've just beveled the end just so I could get a good nice clean edge here. So all we're going to do is push it really nicely against the edge, make sure it's nice and clean here. Okay, so what we're going to do, just like we did before, a touch of CA glue. Okay, that should do it. So now we're just going to go and drill through our 2 holes. And these are the holes that we've already tapped, so just be careful when you drill them. We're going to drill through these first with just a 49, just so we don't hit our taps, and then we'll come back and do them just like we did on the bolsters with 44s, and then we're going to countersink them with 5/32. To get the carbon fiber off, just slide a razor blade in here, and that will usually just pop the glue. There you go. And another little tip, don't clean off this glue right away. Use that as your indicator. The glue is the inside, so you need to countersink the opposite side. But first we're going to do a number 44 to make these clearance holes. So we've got our scales on. Now I'm just going to go to the bandsaw, just cut these out, and then we'll assemble the whole thing. And now to reassemble. I've got the stop pin sex bolt with a washer, then the blade, the other washer. Okay, we'll put our back bar. Alright, there it is all together. Still comes out pretty nice. It's pretty centered. Now we're going to do the fun part of now we can finally trim it up. Now that we've got the bolsters, the liners, the scales on, we're just going to go to the grinder. First we'll open it, make sure it's all nice and flat, and basically do the border. Okay folks, now it's starting to look like a knife. It definitely opens, and we've trimmed it all up. Looks much nicer now. So that's it for this episode. In the next episode, I'm going to heat treat the blade. I'm actually going to heat treat it before that. You guys can see lots of videos about heat treating. So I'm going to heat treat the blade. Then I'm also going to surface grind it. Then we can do the back bar and get that all situated and make sure that we're all nice and lined up. Okay, then we're going to do the actual lock and the detent ball. So by the end of the next episode, we should have a functional knife. And then we'll just have to do finish work, like actually grind the blade and, you know, the bevels and make it look pretty. Also, the pattern for this is up on my website. If you want to purchase this pattern, I will have updated it and moved these bolsters, these bolts for the bolster out a bit. If you're a Patreon member, you can download this design for free. So maybe you want to consider becoming a Patreon member. But that's it for this week. I'll see you on the next one.